Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first session of the Intelligent Interview Series. We're going to talk about preparing for your interview today. My name is Heather Rickrell, and I'm a career counselor at UWS Career Services. And we're just going to go ahead and get started in the series. And the next thing we are going to talk about is what we'll cover. I'm going to talk about attire, about research, about technology, and about practicing. And if we can hold the questions until the end, that would be the best. I am recording, and we will stop the recording at the end so that people don't have to speak and be recorded. So, first things first, attire. Why is, oops, why? Well, first, we'll talk about why interview preparation is so important. The big reason is that interviews are all about impression. So you only get that one chance to make that first impression. So, quotation here, well attributed to Will Rogers. So attire first. I just grabbed Dan Nevin's quotation here: "Never wear a backward baseball cap to an interview unless you're applying for the job of an umpire." So his point there is, dress for what you're after, and make sure it's appropriate for the field that you want to go into and the job you're going for. So a few things about planning your attire. I think for me, it's really helpful to ask yourself these questions: Is my interview taking place via phone, in person, or virtually? Um, the next question would be, if it is in person, will I be taking a tour? Will I be expected to walk a long distance, encounter uneven ground, or be standing for longer than a few minutes? Because those are going to give me clues into what kind of footwear I might need to be wearing, and do I need to dress warm? Um, do I tend to run hot or cold, especially when nervous? So you might want to consider, layers or, um, a jacket for being outside, those sorts of things. So and then the last question would be, what do people in this career field, and especially in this position, typically wear? And that's how you want to tune your attire, is figure out what people typically wear, and then you either want to copy that or go one step beyond. Just depends on what kind of impression you're trying to make. The most important advice I can give you about attire during an interview is that you really need to make sure that you're comfortable. If you have something on that's, say, like scratchy around your neck, or it's too tight, you might be tempted to fidget. If it's a material that doesn't breathe and it makes you too warm, you might start to sweat or get really red, and that can be uncomfortable. And then, whatever look you're putting out there really needs to convey that you're serious about the interview, about the company, and the position for which you're interviewing. And like I said with the slide about the baseball cap, it's actually better to be overdressed than underdressed. So even if you show up, say, in a shirt and tie to a company where they typically wear a polo shirt, that's okay. It indicates that you're serious and willing to jump into their team. The next piece is about research. It's a really critical part of preparing for your interview. And when you research the company ahead of time, you really are telling the employer, the potential team, that you're really serious about them, and you're willing to do the work. The second thing would be that knowing what information you can find about the company and organization really gives you an edge, and you can really tailor your answers and examples to their mission, their values, their initiatives, things you've seen in the news. You can do that really specifically and effectively, and that hits home well. You could literally be asked outright, "What do you know about this company?" or "What do you know about being a blank, a finance manager, a marketing specialist," something like that. So um, you want to be prepared for those questions. You can use this checklist that comes from libgig.com. to drive your search. So again, what does this organization do? What are their missions, goals, values, and so on and so forth. So those are good questions to kind of guide your research. And then this comes from Ignite Digital. And I thought it was interesting that they kind of talk about what and who, and maybe a little bit how to do the research. So they suggest that you look and see if there's like a company blog, social media, or any last minute news, and then look at the people that are included. So the recruiter and the receptionist. And I love that piece about the receptionist because oftentimes you go someplace for an interview, or you know, during the application process, there's an admin person who's sort of helping shepherd the process, setting up interviews, answering any questions you might have, sort of serving as the intermediary between you and whoever's doing the hire. Um, you need to treat that person with the utmost respect, and the more you know about them, the better. Because I can guarantee you that the recruiter or whoever's running the search committee will ask the receptionist, did you have any input on this person? What they're asking is, how was that person? Did they treat you with respect? Did you get any, you know, clues about them? Were there any red flags? Was there anything, you know, really great about them that you want to share? And because they trust their admin people, what they have to say, what the receptionist has to say, um, is really critical. So carries a lot of weight. Don't ever underestimate that piece. There's another one from JobScan. I really like this checklist because it talks about what do you need to know about the company, and then what do you need to know about the job. So you should be really familiar with the job description, or at least the posting. Um, if you don't have a job description or position description, you can find those things on LinkedIn, at least to get an idea. Um, you should kind of know what the salary pocket is, and you can find that on the Occupational Outlook Handbook or on ONET Online. Um, if you don't know what the start date might be or what their kind of idea of that is, that's a question that you should ask when you get that question. What questions do you have for us? Same thing with hours. You should try to figure out what your role is going to be within the company landscape. So LinkedIn is another great place to figure that out. And LinkedIn will also help you figure out who the current employees are in position already. So I've already mentioned LinkedIn. It's a really powerful tool for researching companies, roles, and people. It's a purely professional social media platform. It is definitely not for the, you know, hey, how you doing? Let's hang out. It's not the place to share, you know, personal opinions about, you know, religion or politics or those things that we're told to avoid. It really is a place for professional connections. It's professional networking. But there's a lot of things LinkedIn does besides that connecting people piece. So don't underestimate the information that you can glean from researching company pages, other jobs that are open in the company, and the people who work there. I really like the article that I have listed here from Peak Careers. It has details on how to use LinkedIn as a research tool. So it literally walks you through all of that. So technology is the third thing that we really need to be thinking about as we prepare for an interview. We all know that we're sort of, you know, in COVID times here, and coming up on a year of that. Um, but it's still, you know, kind of a joke somewhat about, you know, what are those Zoom meetings like? What's, you know, Skype like when it freezes? So we have this graphic on the left here where the team leader freezes. You know, you see his face in the second frame there, and people are wondering, like, is it what's cold? What is it frozen? Should we wait? Should we? Did I miss something? Hi, sorry, I'm late. You know, all of that, and we just sort of expect it. And you know, Progressive has really made some good commercials about, you know, the realities of virtual meetings and such. And then the other piece I wanted to share was I just looked up some of the things that people are posting about what it's like to be in a Zoom meeting or a Zoom schedule. Um, so sometimes things get delayed, and people are trying to make connections, and audio can be a problem, and so on and so forth. And so I just thought this slide could provide a little humor today. But I think it makes a point about our virtual reality, in that we really need to be prepared to handle any of the tech kind of snafus that might come up, any of those struggles. We need to also be able to manage our nerves around when those sorts of things do come up, because I think we probably need to plan that they are going to happen and be ready for that, and then be thankful if those things don't happen. Um, so the critical piece here then becomes that we really need to test. You got to test it a couple different times if you can, even. So do that ahead of time, and the more realistic it can be, the better. So Career Services has a small team, but we can certainly jump on during, office hours are a great time to pop in and be like, hey, how's my sound? Can you see my screen? How's my background coming across? I have to give a presentation. How do my slides look? Can you easily get connected to whatever platform it is? And do you know those basic controls? So making sure you know how to control your mute on and off, your video on and off, your screen share. And I mentioned volume. I don't know if you can see it or not. I am using headphones. It does make my sound clearer, and it somewhat cuts background noise. And then the other piece is, do you have a strong connection? Um, those are really critical pieces of dealing with technology as far as getting ready for the interview. Now, you may be given a platform to use, like Blue Jeans or something like that, that isn't super common. However, if they give you access to that ahead of time, or are willing to test that ahead of time with you, awesome. If not, and you really can't access that specific technology, you might try doing an internet search for that technology and see if you can see some screenshots or a demo or something like that, so that you can kind of tell what's going on there. Um, Otherwise, it is good to know that for the most part, they have a lot of really similar features. And the other thing I would say is, again, if you can't get in to test it, some other way with some other people, you need to plan to be on early and ask if you can test everything. Hey, I'm new to Blue Jeans. I've never used it or seen it before. Can you sort of walk me through it, or show me where the controls are? And hopefully they would be willing to do that with you. The other piece of this is to have a little bit of a backup plan for interviewing, especially if you're doing the virtual thing. And I keep harping on the virtual thing here, because it's probably about 85 to 90% of the interviews that are going on right now are virtual. So that backup plan is really crucial. So if your technology fails, or if there's an issue, whose name, email, phone number do you have that you can connect to and get the message? They will get that message immediately that you're having issues. Um, the backup plan for technology right now is a good old fashioned phone call. So whose number is that going to be? And one easy way to set that up would be, we talked about that administrative person, that receptionist. If you are working with that person in the process of applications and interviewing and such, that's probably somebody you can call, unless they're sitting in on all the interviews. But typically that's a great person to be connected to. So we talk about practice here. This is the last major area of getting prepped for your interview. Practice is really important because it boosts your confidence. It can really help you learn to manage your nerves. Um, and again, so can that practicing the technology. Um, it gives you a sense of pacing. So, time management is really critical in an interview. And here's what I mean by pacing and time management. A lot of times, you'll go into an interview and they'll say you have, or you'll get your schedule and you'll know that you have an hour with the search committee. And maybe you have to give a half an hour presentation to a certain group, whatever it is. Um, but they don't tell you in that hour session how many questions there are going to be. So you need to figure out how pacing works and figure out, okay, I've got to give them enough kind of meat in my answer, enough context to show them I'm the best option for this, for hiring for this position, without going on or without answering the question and those sorts of things. So um, one thing that's super helpful is if an interviewer tells you, okay, we have the next hour with the search committee. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes at the beginning giving you an overview and giving you some information. We want to leave 10 minutes for you to ask questions afterwards. Otherwise, we have 14 questions for you. So you do some quick math, right? You've probably got a minute and a half to 2 minutes to answer questions. So that's what I mean by pacing. Again, it's really tough if they don't give you those specifics. However, the next section we're going to do about intelligent interviewing, we'll talk about some strategies to keep your answers short and organized, and that's really going to help with pacing. Um, Practicing really points out any speech tendencies, both helpful and not so helpful. So, one thing that I notice whenever I watch my recordings is that I say so and a lot. I also say a lot. And other students find that they do things like say, or somewhat, or they'll drop off at the end of an answer, or they'll have kind of an awkward ending, or they'll start every answer with, yeah, well, blah, blah, blah. So those tendencies that are not helpful can be worked on, and the ones that are helpful can be enforced. So that's an important piece of practice. Becoming more quick on your feet and more agile when you get a doozy of a question. I'll share with you that the question that put me back on my heels the most, this is like the most difficult question I've ever been asked in an interview, is, okay, Heather, you've been granted 3 wishes. The only wishes we can't grant are for more wishes, for world peace, and we can't bring people back from the dead. Which wishes would you wish for? And I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, what are they after? And what should I say? Right? There are other questions where I've heard where they will ask you something like, okay, somebody's going to write a book about you. What title should they give the book? Like, what are you going for there, right? But you need to answer the question and not get flustered, right? So becoming agile and quick thinking are really important pieces that practice can help you with. And then the other thing is to practice those questions that you might ask a potential employer. So whether you're reading those off or whether you've kind of got them in your head, you want to make sure that you're asking the question clearly so they're not confused about what you're asking and so that you're not kind of bumbling around. So for practice strategies, some things that students have found are helpful is search out a question bank for the job title or something similar. And even those common interview question banks will help you. You could write down your answers to those and kind of reviewing those. I wouldn't really write them down word for word because you don't want it to sound scripted. But once you come up with what you feel like is a strong answer, writing them down and sort of picking out the highlights can be super helpful. Recording yourself and then watching and listening to it for a couple times. I know some students will just record the audio, and that's great. Again, noticing those patterns, what's helpful, what's not, where could you improve. Career Services also has this really great online mock video platform. It's called Standout. You can get to it from the campus logins page. You can set up your own interview, or you can choose one that is all ready to go. So there are some templates in there that you can work with. And what it does is there'll be a person that's recorded that asks you a question. When they're done asking the question, your video starts, and then you have a certain amount of time. It has a timer in which you need to answer the question. It records your answer, and then it's on to the next question. When it's all done with all of the questions, it gives you a page where you can see all of your answers. And then if you scroll below all of the questions and answers, you can see where they have used their artificial intelligence to see how clearly you came across, where you might have mumbled or hesitated. And then from that page, you can also share with somebody from Career Services. So if you want to try Standout, campus logins page, you can also get help with this during the virtual office hours as well. So Standout is a really great way to practice. And once you share your interview from Standout to Career Services, we can provide you feedback. And you can access this 24/7, and we'll get you feedback just as soon as we can. And the last thing I would say is when you are practicing, try to get someone you know who will give you honest, helpful, constructive feedback. So I can tell you this right now. I would definitely not want to have my sister be someone to help me with this, because she would say, "Oh, of course it's fine. You did great," because she doesn't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything like that. So try to work with somebody who's going to be like, "Well, I'm not sure I would have said it that way," because that's only going to help you if you can get someone who can do that for you. Okay, so that's all I had for this week. Those are just some quick tips on getting ready for interviews. Next week's Intelligent Interviewer Series session will cover strategies for answering questions and tips for staying on pace. So I'm going to stop recording.